Guys, I initially shot a first impressions video of the latest from Tom Ford, Café Rose, now targeted to the ladies in the Signature collection, originally launched in 2012 as part of the Private Blend collection, which is a unisex offering. But unfortunately that video did not work out. What I did was open up the fragrance for the first time, smell it on camera, wear it on one arm and wear the original on another arm, pause the video, come back. Part 2 did not really record. So anyway, I'm doing a full review of Café Rose for you today. I'm sure you want to find out all about this one. How does it compare to the original? You're going to find out coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, today I'm talking about the latest release from Tom Ford. Finally, another fragrance has moved over from Private Blend now to Signature line. And why is it targeted to the ladies, I wonder? Maybe it was appealing to the ladies more. Maybe men did not really appreciate this one. Do you guys know? And have you guys seen this bottle before? This is a bottle that hasn't been released here with Tom Ford since Noir Femme, which is I'm holding it backwards. Let me show you here. So this is Noir Femme, and I believe it launched around 2015, 2016 when Tom Ford's Noir Extreme launched for the men, and that was the feminine counterpart. It was very similar to the original Noir Extreme for men, but it was maybe a bit more floral in comparison to the men's version. But now we have that same bottle design, but a clear one, kind of a lavender red colored bottle, and it's housing the latest release of Café Rose and targeted to the ladies. So I couldn't find out who created the original Café Rose, but I did see one database listing Antoine Lie as the perfumer. Does anybody know, is this correct? Because the databases don't have any name listed for the new Café Rose, but one of them did mention Antoine Lie. So this is a 2023 launch, Eau de Parfum concentration. I would call this a woody floral fragrance. Mostly for me, it's a woody floral fragrance, but I would also can say something like amber floral. But amber floral, it does get a little ambery when it's drying down, but to me it's dry enough to call it a woody floral. Price for this is 100 ml for $225, much less than the original Private Blend collection fragrance, but still Tom Ford fragrances have gone up way in price. And even though this is less expensive, I think still a bit pricey, so perhaps figure out a way to get this if you're going to get it on sale, or use Rakuten if you're ordering online to get some cash back. So Café Rose 2023 features notes of Bulgarian rose Orpur, Cardamom, coffee CO2, Comorian Ylang-Ylang, Coriander, Frankincense, Patchouli, Sandalwood, Turkish rose Orpur. So when I'm using the word Orpur after rose, it's a Givaudan proprietary collection of ingredients and notes. It means pure gold in French, and this is a collection of notes that is available for people that, you know, or the perfumers that work at Givaudan for creating fragrances. So this must be some special kind of rose that they're using here for this. So the fragrance smells very, very close to the original Café Rose. This is the original Café Rose, as you can see. And when this originally launched, it had a purple label. So it has, since the launch, has gone into the regular Private Blend, but originally it was launched as a collection, in a collection called Jardin Noir, along with 3 other fragrances, not 4, 3. The collection was 4. It had a fragrance called Jonquile De Nuit. I believe that recently relaunched as a exclusive Private Blend fragrance relaunch. And then there was also Ombre De Hyacinth and Lys Fume, or Lys Fume. So I came across a very large decant of Ombre De Hyacinth, which is really, really a fantastic fragrance. And after the outro, I'm going to let you know a little bit about Ombre De Hyacinth. I'm going to spray it on camera for you, tell you all about that one, because it is a really, really great green fragrance. So if you're in the market to, you know, find that one, I think I highly recommend it. But I'm also going to tell you a little bit about an alternative. And also after the outro, I'm going to tell you a little bit about another upcoming Tom Ford fragrance called Myrrhe Mystere. So the fragrances do smell alike, very much alike. So Café Rose 2023 and Café Rose 2012 do have very similar smelling qualities. They really do remind me of one another. But when I'm comparing them side by side, there are minor differences. Again, I'm going back to the Perfumer. I don't know if Antoine Lie was involved in the creation of this. Perhaps also it was discontinued in the private blend and brought back as a signature line as part of the series of fragrances that got a lot of changes that happened to them with the banning of some ingredients. Because the rose, I feel like, are different now in comparison to the rose that's in the original fragrance. So because I'm reading Orpur, the Givaudan proprietary rose, I'm thinking the rose is what's really changed for me, because the rose, when I'm wearing this one, and even though it's very, very close to the original, those of you that are not necessarily really digging into fragrances might not see a difference. But for me, this rose has a soapy quality that the original in Café Rose 2012 didn't have. That's the first noticeable difference if you wear this fragrance and you really, really know the original Café Rose. Again, Café Rose was not one of my all-time favorite fragrances from Tom Ford. It was quite hyped when I first got into the game reviewing fragrances in 2012. It had just launched around that time, because I started my first channel around August of 2012. So I believe this fragrance had launched or was just launching. So at the time, it was pretty hyped. I liked it. I had a decant of it. I didn't have a full bottle, but once Intense Café came out from Montal and I got my nose on it, really fell in love with that one because I liked its milky lactonic qualities, whereas Café Rose, on the other hand, both the 2012 version and the current version are very, very dry fragrances. And just like Intense Café, Café Rose is not very cafe or coffee-like. The coffee is quite minimal for me. It's not about coffee. The coffee is an afterthought. It's there to accentuate the rose and to give you more of a boost of rose in that kind of coffee style. And what happens with the 2023 version of Café Rose in comparison to the 2012 version of Café Rose, we even get less coffee here in comparison to the original Café Rose. Still, it's minor, but much more minor than the original Café Rose. So those are the noticeable differences for me if I'm comparing these two fragrances side by side. But outside of that, I feel the fragrances are very, very similar if you can recognize the differences. So in the end, I feel like this is a very floral forward fragrance, but on the dry side. I don't get the jammy qualities of roses that I like. I feel like you can experience the granular qualities here, the dry, dusty qualities. And that's why I'm saying this is more of a woody floral fragrance in comparison to an amber floral. Amber to me is very syrupy. Sure, it can go powdery, but typically I experience the liquid syrupiness in comparison of the dryness of the woody floral. This to me is very, very woody floral. It's got very warm qualities under the fragrance, but up top it's also fresh. There's a freshness about it, but more of a dense fresh, not fresh as in like you can wear this liberally in the summertime because it's so hot outside. You want to be refreshed with the fragrance. There's aromatic qualities and of course sweet qualities here. It does get sweet and that coffee does come through, but for me it's less than the original Café Rose, and also the whole fact that the rose seems different for me. It's a more soapy quality, and because it's got that soapiness, I find the dry down of the original Café Rose uber sexy and also earthy. I feel like the patchouli in Café Rose 2012 is much more amped up in comparison to this one, whereas the soapy fragrances, I do enjoy them. I've got videos on the channel about soapy fragrances, and here it's the rose I think that's creating a soapy factor. It's the kind of rose they're using here, and I do enjoy them, but I feel like the soapiness of this fragrance is kind of contributing it from being actually a very sexy wear, whereas Café Rose 2012, the dry down was very, very sexy, and I think it's because of the combination of the patchouli and the rose. Here the patchouli is also not necessarily very amped up, and because of that I'm getting the soapiness in the dry down, woods and amber, but not necessarily very, very sexy. So those are my thoughts for this fragrance. I think it's a great fragrance, but once again, it's not one of my all-time favorite Tom Ford fragrances. I can see why it's moved here. They're kind of trying to give it more life, or a new life for this, now strictly targeting to the ladies. but even though I feel like it's fairly unisex, because the rose is contrasted with kind of some masculine notes, and so I feel like it's a balance of, you know, the feminine side and the masculine side, which creates a kind of a unisex offering. So that's all I'm going to say about this fragrance. I like it, but it's, again, not one of my all-time favorite Tom Ford fragrances. It's nice to have and nice to compare here side by side with the original Tom Ford Café Rose. So Café Rose was one of the early rose fragrances for me from Tom Ford. But once I discovered Noir de Noir, which had launched way before the original Café Rose, I was obsessed with Noir de Noir. I thought it was a fantastic rose fragrance. The patchouli, the oak moss, the truffles from underground, the combination, super sexy. Really, really love that about it. But Café Rose, sadly, good fragrance, but when I put Noir de Noir next to Café Rose, Noir de Noir calls me. Café Rose does not call me, sadly. As far as performance goes, also for these two fragrances, I feel like the performance was somewhat equal, and I feel like the original lasted just a tad bit longer in comparison to the new one, but very, very close. And I feel like the Café Rose, the new one, might need to mature and macerate a little bit more, and perhaps the performance might be equaling the older version of Café Rose. And also, I should say, this fragrance is not necessarily a screamer. It's not a screamer. It's kind of on the subdued side. It is a big fragrance, but not uber big. You'll experience a fullness there, but it's not one that really projects out and really is the kind of fragrance that's going to cause people to turn their heads and ask you what you're wearing. Still, a great smelling fragrance. I feel like it's, even though kind of subdued, when your body temp heats up a little bit, you are going to experience some projection, and that's when people are going to smell you. But it sits pretty close to the skin for me, and it's not the beastly kind of fragrances that Tom Ford has. Some of the Tom Ford fragrances are. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the latest Café Rose 2023 edition. Have you gotten your nose on it? So I bought this from Bloomingdale's, which has a ton of new fragrances, our San Francisco Bloomingdale's here, but none of them are on website yet. This is not on the website. I don't find that anybody selling it online, but like I said, I walked over to Bloomingdale's, which is really close to me here, and they're selling it, but it's not even on the Bloomingdale's website. So I don't know when the official launch is for this fragrance, but it is out now. You can go to a store that has it, buy it, and so that's kind of interesting that they're doing that. But yeah, those are my thoughts for Café Rose 2023. Let me know your thoughts on this fragrance. Do you enjoy the original Café Rose? Are you excited for the new Café Rose? And maybe they're going to release some more fragrances from Private Blend over to the signature collection from Tom Ford. There was a rumor that Tobacco Oud was going to make it, but I asked a Tom Ford or Estee Lauder rep, and they said that would never go into the signature line because it's too daring of a fragrance. But let me ask you, what fragrances from Private Blend do you see coming over to signature line? I'm curious. I hope they do bring some more, because Tom Ford line is really, really expensive, and I feel like some do deserve to be in the signature collection of the Tom Ford fragrances. Anyway, stay tuned for some bonus content after the outro. Other than that, guys, this is all I have for you today. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. So as I said earlier, Tom Ford's Café Rose, 2012 Café Rose, launched with 3 other fragrances as part of a Jardin Noir collection. They all had a purple label, and obviously the 4 fragrances launched together, but the 3 of the other ones got discontinued. Café Rose hung around and was selling, I guess, here and there. And then now it's moved over to the signature line, and it is going to, try and sell with this collection. But the other 3 fragrances were Jonquile De Nuit, Ombre De Hyacinth, and Lys Fume. I've sampled all of those fragrances, and recently I ended up with a nice large decant of Ombre De Hyacinth, And I'm glad to have that because it is a super, super fantastic fragrance. Smells amazing. Have you guys gotten your nose on this fragrance? Sadly, it is discontinued, but wow. It is an uber green floral fragrance and very, very classic. I decanted a little bit of my large decant into a spray bottle, and I'm going to go ahead and spray it for you here and smell it on camera and give you some more details on this. Because if you can get your hands on it, I highly think it's definitely worth it, but there is a cheap alternative or less expensive alternative that I'm going to tell you about as well. If you are a fan of Ombre De Hyacinth, do let me know what do you like about it. But it was launched in 2012, as I said, as part of the Jardin Noir collection, and it was created by Calice Becker. And those of you that know Calice Becker, she is a master perfumer over at Givaudan. She's been around for a long time. She's created a lot of great fragrances, including Love Don't Be Shy and other fragrances, Caftan from YSL, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head currently, but she's done a lot of great work, and I really do enjoy Ombre De Hyacinth. It features hyacinth, violet leaves, galbanum, magnolia, pink pepper, musk, benzoin, jasmine, olibanum. So hyacinth for me, even though it's beautiful lavender colored, kind of long flower with little flowers on it, one of the most amazing spring smells ever. Absolutely love them when they put these flowers out at the grocery stores. You walk past them when most flowers don't have a fragrance. This stuff just screams at you with its fragrance, and it's one of the most intoxicating smells. Really love it, and it's really shining here in this fragrance. But it's the hyacinth, a green flower, smells green. Not necessarily the color of the flower, but it has a green smell. Violet leaves, green smelling ozonic note, and then galbanum. And the galbanum is really, really pronounced here. Really, really intense and uber, uber potent. So I really like this one. It's also very, very powdery. And then, of course, it dries down to kind of an amber base, maybe lightly musky and woody and spicy as well. But it's so good. This is such a great fragrance, but perhaps it launched at a time when people were not looking for classic fragrances, and this one kind of like was ignored, and it probably got discontinued really quickly, because for me this fragrance was the most classic out of the 4 fragrances that launched in this series. Most classic. But this is definitely very, very green floral. And the hyacinth is very, very pronounced along with the violet leaves and galbanum. So it has ozonic touches. It's got major muskiness and major greenness as well. So if you are a fan of that fragrance, I'm going to tell you about an alternative that you can get. A more male-leaning alternative, whereas Ombre De Hyacinth is a unisex-targeted release, but a lot of people compare Ombre De Hyacinth to Grey Flannel from Jeffrey Bean. Come on now, focus. Are you a fan of Grey Flannel? It's a fragrance my dad wore, and I absolutely love the way this fragrance smells. But it is very classic smelling. It launched in the late 70s. To me, it smells like a more masculine version of Ombre De Hyacinth. Whereas the hyacinth note, the beautiful spring flower that I was mentioning earlier, is pronounced in Ombre De Hyacinth. That does not exist here in Grey Flannel, but the galbanum and all the other green notes in this, the violet as well. See, it's funny that they mentioned violet leaves in hyacinth. They mentioned violet in Grey Flannel, and for me, it's more about the violet leaves. But either way, what a great fragrance Ombre De Hyacinth is. But if you can't get a bottle, look for a bottle of this. Now, it is very masculine, and it is also very old school, but then again, Ombre De Hyacinth to me is also very old school, even though it was launched 11 years ago and probably got discontinued, so quickly. Anyway, those are my thoughts about Ombre De Hyacinth. And then, last but not least, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the anticipation for a private blend collection fragrance from Tom Ford called Myrrhe Mystere. Are you looking forward to this one? It's launching soon, probably an autumn launch, because it was announced, it was announced recently, but I heard about this and I reported on it months ago after I saw the name and some people told me it's coming. But now there's images out there and it's focusing on myrrhe. Myrrhe is a note, I think it's kind of coming around and becoming popular because Le Labo also has a Myrrhe focused fragrance, although it's a exclusive, city exclusive. But here, this is going to get a worldwide launch very soon. It features notes of myrrhe, myrrhe absolute, sandalwood, musk, smoky notes, and ultra vanille. So once again, it seems like this is a Givaudan perfumer like Café Rose, a Givaudan perfumer, because Givaudan Orpur ingredients were used in the notes for Café Rose, and here for Myrrhe Mystere, it's also another Givaudan perfumer because they're using Ultra Vanille, which is Vanilla Absolute from Givaudan, a very powerful vanilla note. So it sounds like it's going to be very vanillic when it's also very resinous. Myrrhe notes are very unique to me. It's kind of you know, like a frankincense, olibanum, but more sweeter, but not necessarily as sweet as benzoin. So it's kind of a cross between benzoin and also olibanum frankincense, because frankincense olibanum is smoky, resinous without the sweetness, and I feel like myrrhe is right down the middle. So I feel like when they mix it with the note of vanilla, it kind of creates a sweetness there. Here's the funny thing though. Is this created by Calice Becker, I wonder? Because Ombre De Hyacinth was also a Givaudan creation because Calice Becker created it. Calice Becker has a fragrance called Caftan over at YSL Le Vestiaire collection, which is a benzoin-focused fragrance, smoky, you know, vanillic and things like that. I'm just wondering who the perfumer is. We shall see once it's revealed, but this one sounds really, really exciting, and I can't wait to get my nose on it. If anyone has gotten their nose on this one, because I know people end up getting early, you know, launch bottles or whatever, do report back, put a comment down here so we can find out. But I am looking forward to this one. I know Tom Ford fragrances are very, very expensive, but still, I like the idea of Myrrhe Mystere. I like the idea of Myrrhe-focused fragrances. I'll probably have to do a video on Myrrhe-focused fragrances, but definitely looking forward to Myrrhe Mystere from Tom Ford. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for another video soon. Bye-bye.